The phrase is holding you accountable, right? You want these people are holding us. These people are taking care of us. They're protecting us.
I told a lot of people the most difficult one, but then also the one I knew that was going to be most important was like my mom. Let's call her real quick.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Lesson 3. Applying and auditioning.
It's time to start the application and audition process. Every application and audition process is different. Know that your patience will be tested by receiving the same questions over and over and over and over and over again in written and verbal forms. Make sure your answers are always consistent. The path of least resistance is usually, but not always, honesty. If you've established that you will not be sharing something, make sure that you honor that commitment.
As you're starting the application process, take the time to inform at least one close friend or family member about this potential new chapter in your life. Be as transparent as you can be about your intentions, your goals, and your hesitations. Ask that friend or family member to hold you accountable as you move forward. If you start to lose sight of why you originally signed up for this, they'll be there to support you and help keep you grounded.
It's also vital that you study the show that you're applying to be on. If previous seasons exist, make sure you watch as much as you possibly can.
At a later stage of the application process, you'll be given a contract to sign. It will be very, very long and hard to read. This part really sucks, but it's important. Print out the contract, read it, and mark it from cover to cover. You'll mostly find that it says you have no rights at this stage or this stage in the process, but there will be a few clauses that give you some leverage. Make sure to highlight those clauses and take note of them so that you have them in your back pocket moving forward. They could prove helpful in the future.
Before the show, did you watch the show? How much did you really know about it beforehand? And then secondarily, like how much did you really read the contract and all of those things?
Yeah. I did both of those.
Yeah.
I watched an earlier season of the show from start to finish. I watched very carefully, kind of thinking about what they're looking for, kind of what the narrative arc of the show is and how I might fit into another season of that. I started watching a second season just so I could kind of see what is consistent across seasons, right? Is it the same formula that, are they rinsing and repeating, or is every season different? Understanding that formula, seeing what kinds of questions are asked over and over and over of cast members, and preparing myself for that made me more equipped for the audition process. As far as the contract goes, it was not fun. I took the contract, I printed it, I had a hard copy, I had a pen, I read every single clause, and most clauses, they're constantly mentioning eternity, the universe, right?
Perpetuity.
Perpetuity, right? It's very clear that we don't have rights over our own image, how we are portrayed, and that has zero conditions, right? So that came as no surprise, truth be told. What was more helpful was finding in these unexpected places little nuggets, little details that gave me rights where I might not have expected them, right? So for instance, a contract might say the maximum number of hours that you are expected to film in a given week, right? And that can be applied. You might have in your place of living a hidden camera, for instance. If that is rolling at all hours, right, it could be construed in such a way to say that if that's filming at all hours in your place of residence, you are filming more than you have contractually signed up to film, right? So as you're reading these things, just make sure you notate specifically where it says what your rights are, and think creatively about the ways in which you might be able to use those rights to your advantage as you negotiate and navigate this relationship with the production company.
I didn't have the time in my mind to go through the contract like line by line, et cetera. So I had someone I trusted look over it. Hey, where could I be like liable, or what looks right to you, and kind of just let it go from there.
Yeah.
And I won't really have any regrets about that. You know, I think post show like was much more intentional about like the contract and being aware of like those things, but beforehand was not.
Miles, I'd love to ask you kind of about your audition process, the application process, what went into it for you, how it felt, and what lessons you learned along the way.
My initial intentions were never to be a part of the show. My best friend, he brought it up to me and was like, hey, I recommended you for the show. Think you'd be a good fit? I said, bro, you're crazy. Like, no, I'm not doing that. And producers were like really persistent and were like calling me and saying, hey, I think you'd be really good. You can try it. There's no strings attached, etc. And I was like, all right, cool. Like, as long as I don't sign nothing, I'm good. The experts came in the room and they were like, look around. There's 20 of you in this room. 5 of you are going to be married in like 2 weeks, right? That's when it became real to me. And I was like, oh no, like I need to prepare myself mentally, emotionally, physically for this process. Because it felt like I could not have said no. When in actuality, like in hindsight, I could have backed out at any point in the process. And so I think an important distinction is like, if you know the contract and you read the contract, like knowing that where you can get out, and like knowing if this is like, rather than just having the pressure of people that you just met who feel like have this power over you or can coerce you into doing something, like really knowing what your rights are, and that if it doesn't feel like this is what's right for you, like this is not what's right for you.
As you're saying, Miles, it's never too late to recuse yourself, to say, hey, I'm so sorry. I really appreciate how much time and attention you've given to me. I just don't think this is what's best for me at this juncture. And I also, with that in mind, don't think it's what's best for the production, for the show itself.
It preys on like insecurity or weakness or like a lack of just like general awareness. And so if you are not your best self, that can be used against you, or you can be exploited in that way. And we want to make sure that you're safe and that you're healthy and that you're going into this with the right intentions and with like your best as your best self. And so if you don't feel like that's true for you, do not do it. It's going to be okay.
Miles, can you tell us a little bit about why it's so important to be transparent with a friend or multiple friends or loved ones as you're beginning this process?
It's so important just in life generally to make sure you have people who are holding you accountable and who can see you for you and are like objective about a situation, especially when you're in reality TV world in that bubble, right? Like there's a lot of noise and like your perspective can be shifted. And so making sure that you have people around you that will hold you accountable and that will keep you grounded and remind you of like why you decided to do what you did, who you are, especially when you can be under attack when the camera's in front of you, right? That's a whole different just world that you don't, unknown. And so being able to have someone who can say, hey, remember, this is what we said you were going to do. Or like right now, I'm hearing you're sounding like this. And this is not who I know you to be, is really, really important.
And I think the word accountability also can have a connotation of pressure, right? Of that you're bringing these people into your life to like keep you kind of like within a certain framework that you want to establish for yourself. But it's not a coincidence that the phrase is holding you accountable, right? You want these people are holding us. These people are taking care of us. They're protecting us. They're reminding us of who we are. They're affirming us, right? Because that's a huge part of that process too, is making sure that you have people around you, not only to keep you grounded, right? And keep you within that framework, but also to affirm you and take care of you and be there for you and to provide that support system that you need. Holding you accountable. That's not a coincidence.
No, I like that.
Yeah.
I've never thought of it that way. And like, that's love,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that's what you want. The uncomfortable parts of love, but then also like the building you up and like the edifying in that process. And so, yeah, thank you for sharing that part.
Yeah. Throughout this, it's also important to remember as you are communicating with your friends, with your family, that you're not the only person who is going on this journey, right? The people who are in your inner circle, even people who are slightly outside of it, are also potentially going to be subjected to scrutiny, to speculation, to all sorts of outside forces that may take their lives in any manner of directions, right? So as you're communicating with them, make sure that you are acknowledging that too. Like, hey, this is something that I'm going to be doing. And this is something that if you're willing to participate in it in some capacity, like I imagine that this is something that you will be swept into as well.
I think another important distinction is being very clear with them on like your intentions is so important, because when it comes to a time where they're impacted by your decision to make this, by your decision, that you all are able to have a conversation around, like, I'm not comfortable with you talking about this.
Yeah.
This is how I want you to respond to about this, because it's so personal and can impact you directly or indirectly for a very, very long time.
Yeah, totally. Great point. Keeping your inner circle, telling them what is off the table for you, right? Because if I'm, trying not to talk about like, a previous relationship or whatever it may be, and my friend who's being interviewed by the TV show gets asked a question about any exes, and I haven't communicated with him, and he's like, oh yeah, Bennett had this terrible experience, whatever it may be. Yeah. Then production's going to use that. That was something I didn't want to talk about. All of a sudden, it has introduced itself to the world, and I'm going to have to deal with the consequences of that. Miles, can you tell us about a specific friend or family member who you communicated with as you were applying for this process, kind of how they supported you, and what that process was like for both of you?
Yeah. I told a lot of people. The most difficult one, but then also the one I knew that was going to be most important was like my mom. Let's call her real quick. Yo.
Hey, were you trying to call me?
Yeah, you're on speakerphone. Me and Bennett are filming Me and Bennett are filming a broadcast about our experience on reality TV. And I was calling you to ask how you remember, like, what was your reaction when you first heard that I was going to be on TV, reality TV?
I was very upset.
What?
Do you need me on FaceTime?
No. What do you mean you were very upset?
I was mortified, and I said, first of all, I didn't think you wanted to be married. Second, you've never been at a loss for women, so I just was confused.
What? Why were you upset though, or mortified?
Because marriage is not to be taken lightly.
Yeah.
And you're going to marry a stranger. It just was a lot. And I thought, okay, he's just saying that now. He's not going to do it.
Then when you found out that it was actually happening, then what happened?
Yeah, you said, Mom, it was Christmas. You need to start getting your head around this because I'm doing it.
It was Christmas?
Yeah.
That was a good present, huh?
In February. Yeah. I said, you've got to tell your grandparents. I'm not telling them.
You're right. And you're right. But they responded positively, though.
At first, Mimi said she wasn't going, remember?
No.
She said, I'm not going. And then I'm like, you're going wherever Granddaddy goes.
Yeah.
And I said, I think I just got quiet at that point. And then I prayed, God, if it's your will.
What were your fears? Like, what was the best possible outcome and what was the worst? Start with the worst, I guess.
The worst possible outcome, you would be hurt or humiliated or portrayed in a wrong way. People are mean. Those were my fears.
What was the best possible outcome?
That you would meet your true love and live happily ever after. And I would have lots and lots of grandbabies.
Lots of grandbabies. Mom, was there ever a moment like during the show where you had to like hold me accountable to like why I decided to be on the show, or to like what we'd agreed upon ahead of time?
Decision day. Decision day, you called me from the car out front of the location.
What did I say? I don't remember.
You said, Mom, I don't think I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, she's going on what can be. I'm going on what I've seen so far.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, don't do it. I said, you don't have to do it. Don't do it. Just walk away. Now's the time.
And what did I do?
You didn't listen to your mother.
I didn't. But I don't regret that, you know? Like,
okay.
I learned a lot. That was a decision that was like true to me and like true to like my original intentions of making sure that I was committing to like the process and honoring the person, no matter how it turned out, you know?
But I was more concerned that you weren't going to honor yourself.
Yeah.
That you were going to do it to please everybody, and so no one would be hurt in spite of yourself. Right.
And I think that part of the beauty and the challenge of this process was realizing that I was making a lot of decisions to please other people.
But what I hated the most was the fact that people felt they could say anything.
Yeah.
And do anything to anyone, good, bad, or otherwise.
Yeah. That sense of entitlement.
And would just confront you. I've been confronted on several occasions and recognized. Your grandmother was confronted. Your sister, I'm sure your dad, but I'm like, why? Because you think you know somebody. You feel the right to say whatever you want to say. And it's not just because, well, they go on TV, they open it up. No, it doesn't mean it opens up for any type of negative comments that you have. That was the biggest thing.
Thanks, Mom. Appreciate you.
You're welcome.
When you become famous off this, I'll give you a couple dollars and some food.
I have an email already that says Miles' mom.
There you go. All right, Mom. I'll hit you later. All right, love you. Yeah.
Simple tips. We're going to start with the ones that you've heard since the beginning of time. Always be punctual, dress well, demonstrate your commitment to this endeavor for the people who are evaluating your candidacy. Also, make sure you communicate with your loved ones. Take the time to call them, to reach out to them, and tell them what's going on. And lastly, take the time to read and notate the contract.
Practice answering the question, why are you applying for this show? At least 10 different times with 10 different answers. Write it down if you need to. Continue to answer that question so that you say it consistently. Make sure you're honoring the off the tables and, if possible, feeding into the archetype that you've identified for yourself. We hope that you feel confident and comfortable going into the application and audition process. Now we're about to move into one of the most practical parts of the entire process, interviewing. Throughout the entire show and leading up to audition, we want you to be able to feel confident going into the interview process, knowing that you're going to be answering questions on camera, on the spot, and that can often be a very uncomfortable process for you. So we're going to give you some practical tools and skills to be able to be most effective and confident in your interview processes.